Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. They offer free checking with industry-leading mobile banking. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more. What's going on, Hokie Nation? Happy snowy Monday morning. We're talking football and basketball. It's episode 336 of the Tech Sideline podcast, and it starts right now. We record on Monday, December 11th, 2023, from our high-tech studios at the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, leave us a like, comment, and subscribe, and do us a favor, refer the show to a friend as well. Let's go ahead and introduce the fellas on set. It's your football crew. To my right, lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman. Across the way, our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Producing behind the scenes, it's Mr. Jack Brizendine. In the fourth chair, of course, it's David Cunningham, and I'm your host, Giovanni Heater. Good time to tell you that Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. But this episode is also presented by The Hokie Way. The Hokie Way's $250,000 Stone by Stone fundraising campaign is underway, and they have set a new goal for Tech Sideline of raising $75,000. As of today, we have raised over $20,000. To learn more and donate, click the link in our YouTube video description or visit Tech Sideline to find the link, or email us at staff@techsideline.com and ask how you can donate today. All right, gentlemen, we know that the Military Bowl is on tap. Virginia Tech and Tulane coming up December 27th, a couple of days after Christmas, 2 p.m. kickoff. That's going to be on ESPN, and we're going to start today's show with an idea that Andy brought up. It's going to be a little fun here. We're going to talk about the ACC Bowl slate, juice or no juice. Pretty simple. Does this game have juice or does it not? And we're going to go through the entire ACC bowl schedule here. Andy, it was a fun idea.
We should mention this is a nod to Aaron McFarlane here. We used to do this on our podcast, our favorite game. This is like a game show. Juice or no juice. So just imagine like a crowd yelling out juice or no juice on each of these.
Awesome. All right, well, we're going to start with an interesting one here. The Orange Bowl. New Year's 6. It's Florida State and Georgia, kind of the battle of, who doesn't want to be here type thing. Both teams were on the precipice of the college football playoff. Did Florida State get snubbed? Georgia had to win the SEC championship. Obviously, they're two-time defending national champions. Does this game have juice, or because of the fact that they're both not in the playoff, does it lose all of its juice? We'll start with Chris.
I think it has juice. I think Florida State will come out wanting to prove something, even if you don't have their starting quarterback. And it's a game. It's Florida State and Georgia. It's a border battle. It's two big state schools that have won national championships. So yeah, juice all the way.
No juice.
Oh,
what? No juice. You've got to be kidding me. No, there's never been a New Year's 6 game between two teams that have wanted to be there less than these two teams. They had a photo of like a screenshot of Norvell and Kirby Smart at like the pregame teleconference, whatever they're doing on a Zoom, and they just both looked miserable to be there. Now most coaches are when they're doing those Zooms anyway, but like they do not want to be in this game. They both wanted to be in the playoff, and neither of them are there. So I think you're already going to see some opt-outs. I mean, I'll watch and I'll be interested because it's like, oh, can Florida State, prove everybody wrong? I don't think they will, but I'm going to say no juice on this one. Just looking at where these teams want to be versus where they are.
D-Connor, what you got? You got some juice or no juice?
I don't think. I think there's a smidge of juice, not a lot, but I think it's like there's like a little drop of juice in there, and I think it's because it's mostly because neither of these teams want to be there. Like they'd rather be somewhere else. Like yes, they get to go to Miami, but there's no guarantee it's A, going to be warm, and that B, they're going to have any fun because they'd rather be in the college football playoff. But I think if it was just one team, like we've seen before, like when one team gets left out and they have to play a team that's fired up and ready to play, that it's a letdown by one team. Well, you can't really have a letdown by both teams in the same. I mean, you can have a letdown game, I guess, but like for the most part, you're probably going to see a decent game when both teams don't really want to be there, like because they're both on the same energy level, so to speak. So I think it's going to be a very not much juice game with a little tiny juice.
I'll give it juice if Florida State comes out and it just like leans into the bad guy role. It's just like, you know what? We're just here to take no prisoners. Like, we're angry at the world. Like, maybe then, but I don't feel like they'll come out that way.
Well, you heard it here first with Chris. Slap that on a bumper sticker. A mimosa's worth of juice in the Orange Bowl between Florida State and Georgia. You got to love that. I'm going to go no juice for this one as well. It just feels like watching that press conference and then the fact that they canceled the next media availability session between Mike Norvell and Kirby Smart. It was like, okay, something's a little weird here, so I'm going to say no juice. All right, this one's a fun one. Louisville and USC in the Holiday Bowl. We'll start with Andy.
Caleb Williams is not playing in this one, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
I'll give this one some juice because I don't feel like there'll necessarily be a lot of defense play. I guess Louisville's got a pretty good defense. USC just fascinates me because, you know, Lincoln Riley is like, you look at his record, he's such a great coach record-wise and under so much pressure now just because the defense hasn't been right. So I'll give this one juice just because I think it's two interesting teams, Louisville overachieving this year and USC underachieving.
I'll give it no juice because, like, last year USC cared so much about their bowl game that they lost to Tulane, right? Are they going to do the same thing? Like, USC doesn't strike me as a team these days in the modern era of college football that's going to take a bowl game against Louisville seriously.
And this ain't a New Year's Six either.
Right.
Last year against Tulane, it was the Cotton Bowl, right?
Right. So
imagine if Lincoln Riley loses this game too, though, even without Caleb Williams.
Right.
It's like the chorus of like is this guy the right guy?
Right.
Like, that's kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know who else you want if you're USC. Great coach, phenomenal young coach, had success at Oklahoma. How many Heisman quarterbacks does he have now? 2? 3?
Yeah, but can he succeed in LA? Does he have the temperament to succeed? Like, you know, Pete Carroll was like this cool cat kind of coach and like everybody's buddy, and he could handle the LA glare. And Lincoln Riley is like this hardliner, no information gets out. It's like, okay, that plays in Oklahoma. Does that work in this LA lifestyle that you're at now?
It's
I feel like it's a misfit personality wise. Maybe
It's like Miami's never really been able to replace Jimmy Johnson.
right.
30,
Yeah.
40 years later, they haven't been able to replace.
That's a very good point. Deacon, you got to need juice in the Holiday Bowl.
I don't think so. I think Louisville will bring the A game, I think. But I don't think USC will have anything. I think, like you said, you put it very simple, Gio. USC didn't even show up last year for the Cotton Bowl against Tulane. Like, this seems like almost a repeat a little bit of maybe not as glamorous bowl game, but you've got a Louisville team that had a good season in year one under Jeff Brom coming in. That, you know, Andy and I believe you were there in Louisville.
Yep.
Witnessed that Louisville team, those fans. Louisville probably traveled pretty well, I can presume. And even though it's in California, I just don't think USC will be up for the game. And whether that's on Lincoln Riley or on, you know, the Caleb Williams leaving, or just USC fans looking at it as a demoralizing season, even though they won 8 games or whatever it was. I just don't think they will have the juice needed.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to USC. No Caleb Williams. It feels like USC this year, because of the expectation, like we looked at them like, hey, they might be a playoff type team when the season started. They had the reigning Heisman winner in Caleb Williams, and then they just kind of started to go the wrong direction as the season went along. So I think because of USC, no juice. I think, too, a point that we didn't bring up with Louisville is the fact that if Florida State gets into the playoff, Louisville's playing in the Orange Bowl. There could be the slightest bit of disappointment. Now, the Holiday Bowl is a good bowl, but you're not playing in a New Year's Six, and Louisville is like right on the precipice of being a New Year's Six caliber football team, considering they played in a conference championship game. So I think it loses a little bit of juice. How about the Pop-Tarts Bowl? You got NC State, who had a phenomenal season, all things considered, just kind of crept up on us all the way till the end, and then next thing you know, boom, they're 18th in the country. They're playing 25 Kansas State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. We'll go Chris first.
No juice. You've got Boren Doran, as Andy likes to call him, versus Kansas State. Kansas State football, I respect the history of their program. They've done a really good job, but, you know, it's hard for me to get up for a Kansas State.
Yeah, this one, I'm with you. It's just like, I'm going to watch this game, and I think it could be a really good game because they're two good programs, but just the excitement level, NC State and Kansas State do not scream excitement, so I'll say no juice.
David, what you got?
No juice.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not even a mimosa.
No, like Chris said, Doran's kind of boring. NC State fans don't like him for it, but he wins football games.
I don't think he's boring, but
I think the NC State fans are coming around on it.
Yeah.
Like there was a time there where they're like, we need to be more excited to win. It's like, you win 9 games a year. I think you'll be okay with that. I think this one might have a bit of slightest bit of juice because of like the Pop-Tart logo or mascot. Like, what are they going to do with that thing?
Yeah,
Somebody
it's
gonna get
an
dumped
edible
on with
mascot.
Pop-Tarts.
It's crazy
I
we're
would-
saying a top 25 game has no juice.
I will say this: like, they went 9-3, so they could win. He could win his 10th game. It'd be the first time he won 10 games. at
NC State has
right?
only had one 10-win season in its history.
Wow.
That was the
Okay.
Phillip Rivers.
It's funny.
Was it
I'm
Gator
deep-
Bowl? What year they?
Okay.
I think they won that
Yeah,
year.
so like 2000.
They had a chance a couple years ago, and then UCLA had to back out of the game because of COVID.
So I was in Danville this weekend, and I was talking to one of my friends back home, and he knows an NC State fan. And the NC State fan can't stand Doran. Doesn't think he wins enough. Thinks NC State should be competing for a national title. Kind of delirious, but I think the guy's done a good job. But still, no juice for this game.
I mean, I think it's 8 or 9 wins in 6 of the last 7 seasons.
That's pretty
That's
good.
pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
I know they never had that Atlantic Division title. That was the one thing that was missing on NC State. But I mean, it's a really rock solid program.
They haven't had that level of consistency in forever.
I'm not gonna lie, fellas. These bowl matchups are actually kind of underwhelming here. How about 22 Clemson against Kentucky in the Gator Bowl? That's gonna be on the 29th, noon on ESPN. So your midday game. I believe the 29th is. What is that? Is that a Saturday? Is that a Saturday noon game, which helps things a little bit? What do you got between Clemson and Kentucky? We'll go David first. Oh,
That's
sorry,
a Friday
Chris.
noon game.
Is it a Friday?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, go ahead, David.
I think there's a little bit of juice in that one. I mean, Clemson, a little bit of disappointing, but Kentucky's a team that will throw some punches, literally. I think there's a little bit of juice in that one simply because Dabo always seems fired up in some regard about something, whether it's a random caller on his radio show. I think the Kentucky fans might be a little fired up too after looked like Stoops might leave there for a second. I think there's a little bit of juice.
Yeah, I think there's juice there. I think just with Clemson, it's always sort of a referendum on Dabo and how he's doing right now every game they play, especially spotlight games like this. It's like, is the offense going to turn a corner? Does he know what he's doing on the offensive side? So, and that's a pretty good Kentucky defense that you're going up against. And then you see what Kentucky, all the SEC fans are crowing because they beat Louisville at the end of the year. I mean, if they beat Clemson too, it's just going to be another thing that the SEC can hang its hat on.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, I would go juice. I like most matchups between like two state schools, even though I know I said no juice on Kansas State game, but yeah, I like that one. Should be a good watch.
You were right. That is a Friday at noon. How about this one? I think this one, and I'll go a little bit of juice for that one as well. I think this does has some juice to it. The Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. It's Miami. It's Rutgers inside Yankee Stadium on that Thursday. I think this has a little bit of juice. Curious to see what Miami's got, and I've liked Rutgers all year. They were an interesting watch in the Big Ten. I'll put it that way. We'll start with Andy.
0 juice.
No, okay.
Oh my goodness, no juice. Who's playing quarterback for Miami? Like Van Dyke's in the portal, and I think the other guy's not available. Like it could be a real dud of a performance by Miami, and Rutgers brings no juice to the table. Like, kudos to Greg Schiano for getting that program to a bowl game, but that is a boring program. I mean, we
They
saw
run
it
the
first.
ball.
They run the ball. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not an exciting bowl match, but I'm going to say no juice.
No juice. I respect Rutgers. They're a very physical team. They actually won, I think, 2 or 3 games this year when their quarterback failed to throw for 100 yards. They actually beat Tech without the quarterback throwing for 50 yards. So they're, yes, very boring team, but a very physical team. Got a bunch of Miami kids going up to New York in December without a against a physical football team. I think Rutgers is going to drill them because Miami's not going to be not going to be.
Are
ready
you
to play.
suggesting that Miami is not going to
Show up for a football game?
late season game that has little significance to it?
It might happen.
I'm sticking with my juice. Deacon, what you
No
got?
juice. No juice. I mean, it's probably because you're a New York guy and you
Yeah, I just
expect
love
you
the
expect
Pinstripe
teams
Bowl.
to bring juice. I mean, I look at it as like when Tech played the Pinstripe Bowl, Tech had no juice.
No
Like,
juice. Oh, yeah, the game's in a baseball stadium.
That's gonna be
That was a
my
little
frame
different.
of reference for every Pinstripe
Yeah.
Bowl game. It's just how miserable.
Like,
it
like,
is. So it's
like
so
here's the thing.
cold.
I think Rutgers will bring a little juice because Rutgers has been a pretty good team this year and is going bowling, and like
That's a win for them.
that is a big win for them. Miami does not have a care in the world.
I think it's automatically any bowl game played in a baseball stadium, no juice.
Well, not except,
No,
except the
no
Holiday
way.
Bowl. Except the Holiday Bowl.
that couldn't qualify as juice because it's San Diego.
I will say this: if it is as cold as it was when we were there for that Pinstripe Bowl, no juice at all.
I'm a sucker for the Pinstripe Bowl. It's in New York.
You're the only
Syracuse has
sucker for
played
the
there 3
Pinstripe Bowl.
times. It's a great bowl game.
You and all 5 of the fans that show up for that game.
I went to the Tech one. That was quite disappointing, I will say. Duke's Mayo, North Carolina versus West Virginia. We thought maybe this was a game that Tech had a chance to be in. Would have loved to see him play WVU. Instead, it's North Carolina. Does it have juice, Chris?
Yes, I would love to lock 5 of your stereotypical West Virginia fans with 5 stereotypical UNC fans in the same room and see what happens.
It probably doesn't end well for the UNC fans.
probably would not.
Let's be honest about this.
Yeah. I think Carolina's a talented football team. If not a disciplined one on the defensive side of the ball. West Virginia improved this year, and West Virginia fans care about football. The last time I went to a Tech bowl game was actually the Belk Bowl in 2016. And the night before the game, I was in, it's not open anymore, but it was Dell Earnhardt's bar, Whiskey River. And all of a sudden I look around and I'm surrounded by West Virginia fans. And I'm like, what's going on? And West Virginia was playing Miami in a bowl game that night, and Whiskey River was West Virginia alums in Charlotte. That's their meeting place to watch games. So, but they were all great. Like the West Virginia fans that don't stay in West Virginia, and you meet them in places like Charlotte, they were all fantastic. 'Cause I had a really good time with
You
them
were
that night.
bonding over your hate of Miami. In
Yeah,
that game.
that's a good point. Yeah, but I think West Virginia fans are gonna show out for that game because I think there are a decent amount of them in the Charlotte area. So I think it should be a good game. I'm gonna give that one some juice.
Yeah, that's got juice. Drake May's playing, correct?
The most recent article that I read yesterday when I was writing the script, and I'll pull it up right here, it said that it's still uncertain at this point. I would be surprised if he played. It's not a huge bowl game, and he's going to be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, I figured if he would have opted out, he would have done it already.
Would've
I would
done
think
it
so. That's in his home state too.
Yeah.
So he'll have a lot of
He
family
is
and
such a
friends there.
Carolina guy.
Yeah.
I'll give it. I mean, whether he plays or not, I'll give it juice because I think those are 2 kind of interesting programs. Where West Virginia getting back to where it was this year, and MAC, it's always like, is this it? Is this all you're going to retire after this one? There's always that question with him. So
I guess West Virginia's not going to fire Neil Brown.
and this is the bowl
Year
game
after
where they
year.
dump a vat of mayonnaise on the winner. So.
It is weird.
There's always juice when
I might-
that is the anticipation for that after the game.
I might lose intentionally if they were going to do that to me.
And I could be wrong, and Bill, I'm sure, will correct me if I am, but he did this game before on national radio and said, like, on the air they made him eat, like, Oreos and mayonnaise or some weird stuff, like, on the air. I feel like I remember
Absolutely.
him
I don't
telling me
need
a
to
story
eat the
like that.
mayonnaise. It's about dumping the mayonnaise on people. Shane Beamer did it, and they dropped the jug. The people lifted it up. I mean, it's a vat of mayonnaise. It gets pretty heavy when
Yeah.
you lift it up, and they sort of dropped it. It hit him on the head. So they need like a rig that can turn the thing over and dump the mayonnaise.
That sounds a little bit dangerous. David, do you think this one has some juice?
Yeah, even though I don't know how good of a game it's going to be, but it's going to have juice because you got 2 crazy fan bases that want.
Well, I would say one crazy fan base.
Well, yeah, one crazy fan base that might bleed a little over into the other fan base. Yeah, I think it's in Charlotte. I think it'll be a entertaining game, even if it's not a good one. I'd say it's got a little bit of juice, and 2 coaches that always have people complaining about they should be gone by now.
There you go. Well, this one, I think, just grinds everybody's gears a little bit. It's number 16 Notre Dame playing in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl against number 19 Oregon State. Remember, Notre Dame is part of the ACC bowl selection process. If they're not selected into the college football playoff, it's like, okay, so you don't get to be in our conference for football, but you get to be part of the bowl selection, which kind of kicks opportunities out of the way, and that's why Tech continued to fall down the ladder a little bit. So whatever, it is what it is. Oregon State, I think, loses some juice. juice with the fact that DJ Uyunglele is in the transfer portal. Nevertheless, Notre Dame, Oregon State, pretty good year for the Beavers. Does it have juice? We'll start with David.
No. Oregon State's coach left, right?
Yes, that's true as well.
Yeah, no quarterback, no juice, or no quarterback, no coach. You're playing a Notre Dame team in El Paso. The only thing that has juice are the margaritas that they're going to serve at Media Hospitality. Andy can confirm.
I can confirm. I'm going to give this juice, though, because I think Oregon State's a pretty good team. And I know they lost the quarterback. I know they lost the coach. I think they'll be out to prove it against a team like Notre Dame. And I just think of Oregon State, Notre Dame. Was it a Fiesta Bowl back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
Oregon State just pasted them. It was like Chad Johnson at the time.
Tech
and
got left.
TJ Hushmanzada, and they were just bombing them. I mean, it was touchdown after touchdown. So this matchup fascinates me. They have these two teams.
That was 2000. Tech was top 5, went 10-1 that year. Had Michael Vick. We got left out of the Fiesta Bowl, and they took Notre Dame instead because of Notre Dame. And then they proceeded.
Was that a Bob Davie coach?
Yeah, it was like 42-3 final score or something like that.
I remember watching that with my dad, and we were just like delighting in Notre Dame just getting its butt kicked. It was touchdown after touchdown. It was just everything was great.
I'm going no juice. The best you can hope for out of this game: some cool pitchers with some sombreros, and hope your teams who skip curfew. Hope the players that skip curfew to go to Mexico don't get trapped in Mexico. It's the best thing that can come out of it.
Did you see that Oregon State's head coach? It was like viral on TikTok or whatever. Somebody went to Goodwill and all of his stuff was there. And like on the tag, you could find it at like Plato's Closet here. It'll have like the jersey number of a player, or like if it's a coach, like the coach's initials, or sometimes the coach's name, like on the tag, just because when they're handing stuff like that out in masses, they identify. And all of the head coach's stuff was at Goodwill, so he just like donated it before he left. I mean, we're talking loads and loads of Nike super nice Oregon State apparel.
I mean, what else are you gonna do with it? You're not gonna
so.
wear it at your new stop. You might as well dump it off.
I feel like you'd keep some of that stuff, no, but nevertheless, yeah, I feel like you get up for this a little bit if you're Oregon State. You kind of want to prove something. Anybody would when you're playing a team like Notre Dame. It just feels like in that regard you're playing up a tick, no matter how good of a season the Fighting Irish had. I think it's got a little bit of juice, but with Oregon State losing so much, I don't know. How about the Military Bowl? Virginia Tech and Tulane. Give me all the juice, Chris.
I mean, from a Virginia Tech fan perspective, yes, it has juice. But I think from a national perspective, your average college football fan would say no juice.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. If Tulane didn't lose its head coach and a number of opt-outs, it sounds like that all those coaches that are going to Houston with Willie Fritz are going to, they're going to coach in this game.
Okay.
There was an incorrect report originally by Brett McMurphy that the Tulane beat writer at New Orleans, The Advocate, the paper down there. Actually, I think The Advocate is Baton Rouge. Whatever the media outlet down there that covers Tulane is. Yeah, he corrected it, and he said those coaches will be at the game. But, I think questions about Tulane's quarterback, whether he's going to play in this game, I will say no juice on this one.
David?
No juice. I mean, it's going to be, like, I think from the Tech side, like, Tech fans will go and enjoy it. But even from the Tech side, I expect a little bit of a drop off from Tech. Like, Tech spent so much energy in that build up to the UVA game and in the win over UVA. Then you have all this time off, and then you go play a team that's not at full strength. I think from the Tulane side, there's not going to be much juice. You lose your head coach. People are leaving. In a way, this looks to me like, and we've talked about this, like the 2021 Pinstripe Bowl, where Virginia Tech, was head coachless, had an interim head coach standing in, and you knew a bunch of the coaches were going to leave, and a bunch of the players were going to leave. I mean, Tech has players that are going to play in this game that are going to enter the transfer portal the second the bowl game ends. So I don't think there's much juice, but I don't even know how good of a game it's going to be, but we'll be there. We'll cover it.
I think it's a bummer that Tulane's losing so much, because if you played this game, during the regular season, that'd be a heck of a fun game to have on the schedule. They're good, right? They played in their conference championship, double-digit wins on the table for Tulane. Like that's a good football team for where they're at. Would have been fun to play them when they had everybody and were at full strength.
And you have to look at where Tulane is. It's like they were right on the cusp of being that New Year's Six qualifier.
Right. If they
and now
win
they're
their
playing in the
conference.
military, but like that's a significant drop off.
Yeah.
You talked about Louisville going from the Orange Bowl to the Holiday Bowl. Go from the Fiesta Bowl possibly to the Military Bowl. That's an even bigger gap between those two. So I think the state of mind where Tulane is, I think loses some juice.
I think Tech should schedule a home and home with Tulane.
That'd be
a
pretty
nice,
cool.
be a nice
I
road
agree.
trip.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go to New Orleans?
Yeah,
I'd be
be a
down
nice
for
road
that.
trip.
I ask you guys this. Do you think, and this doesn't really matter, but if Tulane does win their conference championship and they are playing in the Fiesta Bowl, do you think their coach doesn't leave or holds off on that
I think
transaction?
I think he leaves, but he probably stays the coach of the game. I think you've seen that a couple times. Didn't Norvell do that at Memphis?
I think you're right.
I think there's been a couple instances.
Would Houston
where,
be okay with that? They'd kind of have to, I guess.
That's the thing.
'Cause they
Yes,
like
you
that
have to.
early recruiting
It's so
jump.
difficult right now because transfer portal recruiting, you have to be on that so much right now. So maybe it changes in today's age where, they're doing the off season during the season. I mean, basically, it's a stupid setup.
It's silly.
But that's how they do it.
Well, you guys don't like the baseball stadiums. I kind of like
You
this.
could probably group these last four into the same one.
yeah,
I
okay.
think we
I
could
don't
know
probably
what they are,
fast
but I'm
forward
going to
the
say
last
no
one.
juice.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll bunch them. Number 24, we are running a little long. You're
Pick
right.
one. Pick
Yeah.
one that has the. Let's see if we can pick one that has the most juice of these
Okay,
last four.
number 24. I think there's a good answer here for the
You're
most
just gonna
juice.
say Syracuse.
No,
and we
no, no.
know
I
it.
think that's probably the worst bowl game on the slate, which is why it's at the bottom of the list. Number 24. Besides the fact that it'll be warm there. Number 24, SMU against Boston College in the Fenway Bowl. You got to think BC's going to have a lot of guys playing. SMU just won the American. It's got the littlest bit of juice because these are going to be two ACC teams.
Well, compared to the rest of them, we'll pick one of these that has juice. Of the rest
Duke
of
and
these.
Troy, Georgia Tech, UCF, and then Syracuse, South Florida. That's in the Boca
Those are
Raton
bad
Bowl.
bowl games.
They're horrible. The
I
whole
think
slate
of-
is not very good.
Of those four, I think the most interesting one is UCF Georgia Tech.
Interesting.
Haynes King is pretty good
good.
quarterback.
He is.
I mean,
Yeah.
he puts up stats. Georgia Tech is the weirdest team that just beats like really good teams and loses to really bad teams. I think UCF is an interesting team with Gus Malzahn there. They can score some points. Interesting offense, and just comparing that to the other ones, I like SMU, but the BC that just doesn't interest me that much. So I'd say Georgia Tech and UCF, whatever bowl game that is. I don't even know
That
what
one's
it
the
is.
Gasparilla Bowl.
Okay, there you go. It's in a nice warm location.
That
too. I
is
like that.
That is. What do you got, Chris?
BC bored me even when they had Matt Ryan. Boston
true.
College football, right? So no juice. Even though they're future ACC opponents, no juice.
The only thing interesting about that game is that they have both teams on the same sideline,
Right.
in Fenway Park,
Fenway
because
Park.
of the setup of the field.
Another baseball stadium? No, thank you.
Let's see if those two play each other next year.
That's a good
But keep
question.
going.
I agree with you. Georgia Tech, UCF. I saw UCF play once this year. Watched one UCF game, and that was when they just hammered Oklahoma State, beat them by like 40.
The Oklahoma State team that then played in the Big 12 title game.
The Oklahoma
What a
State
weird
team that had
turnaround.
previously beaten Oklahoma,
Right.
like the week before, I think. Yeah. So I'll give that one some juice. Yeah, interesting matchup.
What you got, David?
Yeah, if I had to pick one, which I don't want to pick any of them because they're all bad bowl games, but it would have to be that one. Duke's head coach is gone, along with half the players. The Syracuse bowl game, I don't even want to think about that, though it is a new head coach.
He's not coaching it.
He's not coaching in it. Yeah, and so Syracuse is going through the same kind of thing, and the other one is Boston. The other option is Boston College. Like those are just four bad options.
Catch the bowl fever here. It was really,
see, the
really
thing
an
is-
endorsement for the bowl season.
The one thing I will say is UCF always brings the juice. Like UCF, like ever since UCF claimed a national championship after it went undefeated, like I have a really good friend who covers Oklahoma State. So when Oklahoma State lost to UCF, we were chatting about this. UCF went into that game where so many people were saying UCF could not win because UCF had one of the worst run defenses in the country. Ollie Gordon was a Heisman candidate this year at running back for Oklahoma State, and UCF dominated Oklahoma State. And they have those cool astronaut jerseys. Like
That's the greatest subplot of college football is all the schools claiming space. It's like Purdue and Rice and UCF. It's like they
Why
all,
do the others? I know UCF makes sense.
well,
'cause
Purdue had all the
location.
astronauts.
Okay.
That went to Purdue, and Rice in Houston. You know, Houston is a big
Houston.
space city.
Yeah.
So, I think Rice is in Houston, isn't it?
Virginia Tech literally had October Sky, the movie. Virginia Tech.
Do they
claimed
want to
space, too.
get in on the space race?
Where's I need some
claiming
space uniforms next year.
That'd be cool.
Can we just bring back the throwbacks first, at least, or the Hokie Stone? Or you don't like the Hokie
Foghorn
Stone?
Leghorn, Andy?
No, never again. Burn them.
What is the gripe with the Hokie Stone jersey?
I just don't think they're attractive.
I could
I don't,
not
I don't
disagree
think they
more.
look good. We're regular uniforms.
It was
We're
a nice
regular
novelty
uniforms.
one-off. It was
One-off.
weird when they had the thing where it was like the university crest, and it wasn't even the VT logo. It's
Yeah.
like they've gone a bit too far from the norm here.
Yeah, I agree with you.
How about Hokie Stone jerseys with Foghorn Leghorn helmet
You just have this
Combine it.
Frankenstein uniform out here. It's like the
with
worst,
orange pants?
the worst elements of everything.
Well, I'm going to stick with my Boston College SMU because I just looked it up too. They're going to play at SMU next year. So a little bit of a early preview. I still think Boston College is interesting with Castellanos. I like it.
Is the country clamoring for this a preview of next year's SMU Boston
No,
College?
but
Okay.
it makes things like a little more interesting.
I'm sure Andy might agree with me. The only way there's any kind of juice is if they serve clam chowder.
They should if they want to make that bowl game like
It's
a
in
thing.
Fenway. It's at Fenway Park.
Yeah,
sure
if
they
they want to
will.
make that bowl game a thing, then and people to show up to it, they should just serve it in the crowd too.
That too. I think Fenway Park is one of the coolest venues in all of sports. So
Doesn't mean
For a
it's going to be a
baseball
good
game.
game.
For a baseball game, not for a football game.
whatever. All right, that is our segment of juice or no juice. Once again, Andy, a nod to a good old friend of yours.
Aaron McFarland,
There we go.
who's probably not listening, but I'll tell him about it.
Well, I promised we're going to reel it in on Virginia Tech, but first I wanted to give both David and Andy the opportunity to talk to us about their Heisman votes. That was big the other night. Obviously, Jaden Daniels comes away with it. The LSU quarterback had a sensational season after spending a year in 2021 at Arizona State as well. So what did your guys' Heisman votes look like?
I went Daniels first. Jaden Daniels. I thought he just had an exceptional season. That was when he accounted for 50 touchdowns.
It's nuts.
Like I don't care that you're 9-3 or whatever LSU was. I mean, 50 touchdowns. That's an incredible offensive season. I went Bo Nix number 2. I thought on the whole,
Interesting.
he just was more consistently great as a quarterback. You look at his numbers. I think it was 40 touchdowns, 3 interceptions for the season, something like that. Wow. Oregon was right there up to the end. I went Marvin Harrison Jr. number 3. Didn't have as good of stats as some of the receivers out there. I thought every time I watched him, he was the best player on the field with a very limited quarterback. Like he was their whole offense in some of those games and some of those big games that they had. And I didn't feel like putting 3 quarterbacks on my list. Otherwise, I would have had Michael Penix Jr. on there. Some people on Twitter are giving me guff about that. It's like, oh, Penix beat Bo Nix twice. It's like, well, it's not a team award.
Right.
And you look at how Penix played down the stretch. He stumbled a little bit in some of those games, and Washington won in spite of him
Right.
in some of those games. So, season-long award, not a team award. Individually, I went Daniels, Nix, Harrison.
Where'd you go, David?
I had Daniels. I had Penix second, and I had Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis third.
What? All right, explain. Defend yourself.
He was so valuable that
He
they
was
couldn't
so
make the playoff.
yeah, he was so
without
valuable.
him.
I think it's honestly kind of like the Hendon Hooker situation last year, where he was one of the best players in the country. And I thought all things considered, Jordan Travis might have been probably the best player in the conference this year had he not gotten hurt. Who won AC Player of the Year?
Who did
I
win
think
ACC?
wasn't it Jordan Travis? I voted for Peyton Wilson. I know
Maybe
he,
it was
I know he
Jordan
didn't
Travis.
win.
Wilson won Defensive Player
Maybe
of the Year.
it was
I think
Jordan Travis.
I think Travis
probably
did
won.
win it.
Best player in the conference. But I think it's kind of like the Hendon Hooker situation, where he was in the running and he was a Heisman candidate, and I think Jordan Travis carried this Florida State team, and Florida State obviously, in a lot of people's eyes, is not the same team without him. And I know it's not a team award, but I thought Travis had a good enough season when he played to be considered for it. And I think that third vote is kind of it's kind of like, Andy voted for Marvin Harrison Jr., which I think is a good vote. It's kind of the one where I look at it and go, okay, there are all these different options. Who could I vote for? And this was also the day after the FSU got snubbed. So I figure, why not? Jordan Travis, I think he finished 5th in Heisman voting.
He did finish 5th, yep.
So
you get to play around with that third place thing. It's like put somebody out there.
I saw somebody put Peyton Wilson 3rd. Like,
I mean, people get so angry about that stuff on Twitter. Like,
there are
these
like
Washington fans coming at me and they're like, "How dare you leave
votes.
Penix off this?" It's like, listen, I would have had him 4th. It's not an insult to have him as the 4th best player in the country. Like, there's difference of opinions, and I hate it when people are like, "Oh, this voter voted this way; they should lose their vote." It's like, this is why there's like 1,000 voters. There's a consensus vote. You total it up, and the right guy's probably going to win it.
And the right guy won.
Like,
when's the last time the wrong guy won the Heisman?
Well, it's just like people get angry about top 25 votes. It's like there's not one solid opinion. Otherwise, you wouldn't poll 60 different people on what their opinion was. Last time a guy won it who probably didn't deserve it. I
don't know.
Mark Ingram.
Yeah. This was the
Mark Ingram
closest.
I think
2012.
Wasn't that the Ndamukong Suh year? I think it was.
They said this was the closest Heisman vote since 2008, though.
Like Derrick Henry 1 year. I can't. The years.
Ingram was 2009.
Ingram was in 2009. You're right.
Was that Ndamukong Suh? Was he that year? Yeah,
I played both that year.
I voted for Ingram over Sue that year, and I kind of regret it in hindsight, and I wish I had been more open to voting for a defensive guy. And that's why I try to use that 3rd spot as something a little bit different, or try to think differently, even for that 2nd spot. But typically the winner, I've been in line with the winner each year, because I feel like there's sort of been a guy that has distanced himself from the field.
It almost feels like going into it, who's gonna win it. By the time you get to that Heisman, like going into it, I feel like everyone thought Jaden Daniels was going to win the Heisman. Didn't feel like a surprise.
Yeah, but I felt like this year it was a little bit more open. Like, I think the last handful of years, who won it last year? Was it Alabama?
It's so relevant that you don't even remember who won.
It was Bryce Young, right?
Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Well, usually there's somebody who makes that last impression in championship weekend.
And Bo Nix had that opportunity.
He did.
And as did Penix.
And I think, this is one of the last guys that didn't play in that last weekend since, like, Lamar Jackson. I mean, he was sort of like Jaden Daniels in that his team wasn't there playing at the end of it, but his stats were so remarkable. And I'm like, you looked at his Daniels big plays.
Nuts.
Like deep passes. It was like 22 touchdowns and no picks. Like if you had just all your passes had those kind of numbers, you would be impressed. But those were just his big play numbers. I mean, it's hard to ignore when a quarterback puts up stats like that.
LSU's top receiver was talking on Twitter. He felt a little snubbed to not win top receiver in the country. I feel like Marvin Harrison Jr. is still deserving of that award. It helps when you have a sensational quarterback throwing you the ball. But it also helps when you got a big target receiver. Nevertheless, Chris, who would you have tossed in there? Just curious if you had your vote.
I would have voted for Daniels.
Daniels?
Yeah.
Yep. There we go.
I didn't have like a dark horse or anything.
No. It's really hard to have one. Like, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. There's a little bit of eye test to it. Nevertheless, let's bring this thing back to Virginia Tech here. You got Lofton entered the portal, Derek Canteen entered the portal, Johnny Dixon and Chance Black, all since the last time we have sat on this set and talked about it. I'll turn it loose to you guys. Thoughts on those guys? I feel like Derek Canteen was the one guy on that list that was maybe not a surprise, but you didn't see coming as much as the others, and probably the biggest loss.
Yeah, I mean, he was a nickel, and the nickel is not on the field all the time. I think he was on the field probably most of the time, but not all the time, and maybe he wants a little bit more playing time as more of a traditional outside corner. I don't know. These guys don't go into detail about why they enter the portal, and for the most part, he's the only guy with extensive playing time for Tech that has entered the portal so far. So what's going to be interesting is, like, if Tech replaces him. Tech has offered, I believe, 3 corners that we know of. Is that to replace Canteen, or is that like as a contingency plan in case Dorian Strong declares for the draft or something like that? I don't know. I know portal offers, some of them are kind of like high school offers. Like, you don't have time to vet these guys. You offer them, then you try to bring them in on a visit, get to know each other, and decide whether it's a good fit. You don't have a year or 2 years or even 3 years to form a relationship with a guy like you do a high school recruit and get to know his parents and ask his high school coach about his character and things like that. This is a very much like a shotgun relationship process. And so I don't know I don't exactly know Tech's plan at cornerback right now. I know their main targets are defensive tackle, offensive line, and linebacker. I'm not surprised that Canteen left, though. The portal, nothing really surprises you these days. Tech's going to lose more. They have to lose more. They have to lose more players just to be able to sign all the high school recruits they signed this year. I think they're still at either 89 or 90 scholarships right now.
I believe you have 88 or 89.
Okay,
right
88
now.
or 89.
That's what you have on the list.
That's right. That's after Chance Black entered. So yeah, they gotta lose a few more just to be able to sign this high school class, and then they'll have to lose even more after that to be able to take guys from the portal. So the outgoings have not ended.
Yeah, I think of the recent guys, Canteen, it did surprise me. Just considering he transferred in here last year. I thought he had a significant role this year, maybe not as much as he wanted in terms of traditional quarterback spot. And who knows with Dorian Strong, whether he's coming back. We asked him the other day, what NFL plans were, and he didn't tell us. He didn't just come out and tell us. Amazing like that. But if Strong comes back and Delane, that's possibly pretty limited playing time for other cornerbacks.
Yeah.
I know Canteen plays the nickel, but that's not on the field all the time. So a little surprised from that. But, you mentioned them offering a bunch of cornerbacks. I think you have to. And you have to get that out there right away. Because if you don't offer right away, you're almost not even on the radar of these guys. So you don't offer a bunch of guys, and then Strong goes pro, and you're like, oh, crap, now we got to offer a bunch of guys, and you're late to the process. I think it's better to be ahead of that than to be playing catching up with that. But the guys have gone in the portal. I guess I could say Daquan Wright was a little bit of a surprise early on. I thought he had a significant enough role to stick around. Derek Canteen is a little bit of a surprise. The other guys, they've all been reserves or all been like, I just don't see a path to a lot of playing time for these guys. So it's not been too shocking.
I think that Lofton and Chance Black can probably find a nice landing spot. Whether they take a step down is most likely what's going to take place, but those are two decent players that didn't see the field a ton for Tech. What are your thoughts?
And Bryce Duke, I mean, he was ahead of Chance Black.
True.
On the depth chart.
Yeah.
I think probably Duke in hindsight wishes he had redshirted one of his years at Tech so he could have 3 years left instead of just 2.
Yeah, I think you look at all three of those guys and it's like, where are you on the depth chart? And running backs, there's clearly a 1-2 pecking order at running back. And if Tootin comes back, another guy who didn't tell us whether he was going to come back. Well, we asked him point blank the other day. If he comes back, how many carries are there going to be for other running backs? Especially when Price talked up Jeremiah Coney coming up behind him. Malachi Thomas still here. A couple guys that that they have signed in the past and are going to sign coming up. And then the receivers. I mean, they overhauled that room. And you look at Lofton, who was their number 2 option last year, had 6 catches this fall. Mm-hmm. So, where's the opportunity there? And he's a guy who's from Texas. I would imagine maybe would try to get a little bit closer to home. And that always seems to be the case with a lot of these transfers. But, this is where the transfer portal, I think, is a good thing because it offers guys opportunities to go somewhere and play.
Do you think that the fact that Tech has 2 running backs entering the portal alludes to anything with Tootin, or they were just so buried anyways? And you said Jeremiah Coney was getting praise from the coaching staff. It doesn't say much. What are your thoughts on that?
The timing of the portal and everything and guys making their NFL declarations, they don't exactly align. Like, what if Bryce Duke decided, I'm going to come back next year just in case if Tootin leaves. But if Tootin doesn't make that decision till later, if you're Bryce Duke, you want to get it in the portal now and get all your options. Because what if those spots at other schools get filled up and you don't make your decision till a month down the line and you don't find a very good landing spot? You want to make your decision as early as possible. So because some of the NFL declarations don't line up with the portal window, I think it makes the decision process even more difficult. So like Derek Canteen, what if Dorian Strong does declare for the draft? And he would have had a chance to maybe start at Virginia Tech next year, depending on the development of Dante Lovett, of course. But if you want to find the best possible landing spot, you can't afford to wait.
Yeah, I think there might be a little insider knowledge with some of these guys. I mean, they talk to these guys. They're in the same room with them all season long. They probably have an idea of their thinking, but I don't know if Tootin was going pro, he could have declared already. It's not like there's some time frame where he has to declare. I mean, it could have happened already. A lot of guys have done that. So maybe that's a sign that he's coming back. But I don't know that you can read too much into that. I think they look at their personal situations. They go, listen, I've been here 2 years, haven't gotten on the field. They're recruiting other guys. In Duke and Black's case, they were recruited by the previous staff.
Mm-hmm.
So they stayed on with Virginia Tech when Pry got hired and then signed with his new staff. But if you were originally brought into the fold by the previous staff, you kind of have to wonder what your standing is with this new group.
Do we know what Tech's philosophy is? Because I'm sure it differs from program to program as far as if you're a guy that enters the portal and maybe it doesn't shake out the way you want, or say it's a situation where one of these guys enters the portal, then all of a sudden Tootin decides he's going to leave, and say just randomly Thomas enters the portal and he does go somewhere else, and there's an opportunity for you to come back. Is their thinking once you're entered the portal, you're gone, or is there that opportunity to open the door back up?
This is a sliding scale. No matter what any coach tells you, this is a sliding scale depending on how good of a player you are. Like,
fair.
If Kyron Drones is like, I'm going in the transfer portal, they're not going to be like, see ya, you're done. You're done here. Because if he turns around in 2 days, he goes, actually, I think better for I'm coming back, they would welcome him back with open arms. Like, right. They can talk tough about this, but it is based on how good of a player you is. There are some guys that go in and the coaches are like, all right, it's probably good for us because it opens up a scholarship down the line.
In the past, we've seen guys like Deshaun McLeese and Hendon Hooker enter the portal and then come back to Tech.
That was initial. That was like the first year of the portal. I think
right.
Fuente even said that. He's like, I didn't educate these guys enough about what this portal is.
Right.
They didn't really know it. And then the next year, he took more of a hardline stance on it where, like, you go in and you're gone. But the guys that were going in were guys that they're like, we're probably not going to miss them too much anyway. Correct. So any coach will, if they have a policy that they're firm on, watch when your star player goes in, how quickly you would welcome him back, and change your policy about that.
Right, like Arizona State. If Jaden Daniels wanted to not transfer to LSU, you're gonna welcome him back.
When Daniels went in, all his teammates were bad mouthing him.
Crazy.
Like, oh, this guy's that terrible teammate and stuff. And LSU's like, fine, we'll take the Heisman Trophy winner. Like, thanks for that.
Did you?
I'm sure Tennessee probably felt the same. Like, not that players were bad mouthing Hendon Hooker when he went in, but I think when he went in, people were like, well, maybe this is a good thing for the quarterback situation. It's like, no, it wasn't actually. It was very bad.
There was something that came out yesterday, I believe, and someone put up the numbers of guys, and I'm trying to see if I can find it quickly here, guys that were on that 2021 Arizona State team that ended up other places. It was actually a stacked offense. You had Jaden Daniels at quarterback, Ricky Pearsall at wide receiver. He ended up at Florida. You had Johnny Wilson, the Florida State big receiver. Yeah. He was on that offense. Rashad White, who plays for the Buccaneers. Conyers, who plays at Texas Tech. Trainum, who plays at Ohio State. I mean, just a stacked offense.
I am shocked that the Herm Edwards experiment did not work in Arizona State. Yeah. Who could have seen that coming?
Is that sarcasm?
Who could have seen that coming except everyone who wrote about that hire after it happened?
There you go. Well, I ask you this, Chris. I want to turn it over to you. What transfers are the Hokies targeting right now in the portal?
Let me go over a few different things here. 2 to 3 defensive tackles are a must. One would be too few, because if that one guy happened to get hurt, then you just wouldn't have anybody. You got Fuga coming back, you got Panay coming back. After that, it's a bunch of unknown. You've got rumors of Gunnar Givens moving to the offensive line. Malachi Madison wasn't healthy this past year. 2 to 3 defensive tackles. Aeneas Peoples of Duke, really good player. He visited Tech over the weekend. He's going to choose between Tech, SMU, Missouri, Penn State, and Louisville. This guy's a great fit for the Tech scheme. A dominant player for Duke this past season. Like, he would actually be an upgrade over the defensive tackles that Tech lost, and those 3 guys were good players.
Everybody left Duke. Duke's gonna stink next
year.
Riley Letter's gone. Both those running backs, Peebles.
They're going to be bad.
That's going to be a big task for Manny Diaz down there.
I would say that he's the best player on the portal that Tech is targeting right now, in my opinion, and at a position of need. Not that anyone would ever use NIL as a recruiting inducement, but if that was legal and people actually did it, he would be one that you would do that for. Kamari Copeland's a JUCO guy, so he's not a portal guy, but he's a JUCO guy, originally from Virginia. He's a major target at defensive tackle. Ayobami Tafasi of Florida State entered the portal. Didn't get much playing time at Florida State, but Tech recruited him out of high school. Tech reached out and offered him, within hours of him entering the portal. So he's a guy. Offensive line, they've offered at least a dozen offensive linemen, which shows that they want to improve their talent and their depth up front. I would be very surprised if Tech's starting offensive line next year did not look significantly different than it did this year. I think they really want to improve there. The two deep's going to look a lot different. Montavious Cunningham's a guy who's supposed to visit today, I think. Georgia Tech. Played tackle at Georgia State. Played tackle there, but probably he's 6'3", so probably a guard at the Power 5 level. 2 years left. But, it's one of these things, like, all these guys have offers, but like I said, the vetting process is so short. A lot of times the decision on whether they're takes or not come after they actually meet the coaches in person for the first time. So that's going to be a fluid process. I don't know who Tech's going to end up, but originally I thought they would just maybe take 2 offensive linemen, but now it seems they've offered tackles, guards, and a center. So they want to upgrade and create more depth everywhere. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they took through 4 offensive linemen in this cycle. They've offered a number of defensive tackles. We went over some of those. I think they're going to sign 2 to 3 defensive tackles. Hopefully, 1 or 2 of those guys has multiple seasons left as well. Like, Peebles only has 1, but if they can find a guy or 2 with 2 or 3 years left, like the JUCO guy Copeland has 2 years left, Tafase has 3 years left. If you can sign those 2 guys with Peoples, who has 1 year left, I think that'd be an ideal defensive tackle haul. We talked about cornerback earlier. Obviously, Mike is an important position. Tech's offered a few linebackers, including a Division II player. I think that's kind of in flux right now as far as who's a take and who's not. Alex Howard of Youngstown State, I believe, did visit this past weekend. Wisconsin, South Carolina, Kansas, Pitt, West Virginia, Georgia Tech, Michigan State. That's some of the competition. But those are the 3 main positions: defensive tackle, offensive line, linebacker. And I expect Tech is going to get some commitments in the next 2 weeks. But I also want to remind people that sometimes the portal can drag out. Last year, Jalen Lane did not enter the portal until January 5th. And then he committed to Tech 3 days later. So just because you don't read someone's name right now doesn't mean in January that it's going to be a different crop of names in January maybe. And, maybe guys get back from whatever bowl game they're playing in and see the players that their team has signed in the portal and think, there's a lot of guys in my position after playing in the bowl game. And then as it turned out, my wide receiver coach left and went to this school after the bowl game, and I didn't know that was going to happen, so I'm going to enter the portal now.
And just because somebody signs or commits doesn't mean that they're actually going there. Otherwise, Bashal Tutin might have been with Boston College this year, and Darian Varner would have been on Virginia Tech's defensive line. I mean, stuff still changes until these transfers enroll.
Yep.
When they sign, they're not signing anything binding.
Right. It's not like
signing
high school.
Day. Yeah. So keep that in mind. A lot of stuff in flux. I think I'll say this. Virginia Tech's coaches, this staff is very targeted with what they go after. And, I give them a mulligan on that first. They knew what they needed that first year, but you don't really have a sense of the full roster about what you're going at. They tried with quarterback, got Grant Wells, starter. Receiver didn't do as well with receiver, although Gosnell turned into a pretty effective player last year. But I thought the job they did last year with need to overhaul the receiver room, need to find a running back that can make plays, need a quarterback, need a pass rusher, need a versatile defensive back. I mean, they hit all of those things.
They even hit Mike linebacker, but then he quit the team.
Well, I wouldn't call that a hit. I mean, they addressed it. They tried to address it.
They identified their weaknesses.
I think, they're very honest about what they need on this team and where the holes are. And as you can see from the offers, they feel like they need to get better in the trenches quite a bit, and then add another cornerback with the uncertainty back there. But I'll give them credit for the guys they added last year. I mean, you look at all the major impact players this year with drones and the receivers and
Everybody.
APR and Canteen. I mean, these are all the best players on the team almost. This can tell you how effective the transfer portal can be, and it's not always obvious when you get them. They're not all going to come from Florida like APR. It could be, a Middle Tennessee wide receiver, a North Carolina A&T running back. Or what are these guys going to do? It's
Norfolk State
I
receiver?
don't know. Just be your, best offensive players. That's what they're going to do.
I want to add this about Peebles. He's originally from Raleigh. And, I don't know anything about the schemes these other schools runs, but he's 6'1", 286 pounds. He's like your traditional J.C. Price, Bud Foster, twitchy defensive tackle, right? I think he would be a perfect fit for the Tech scheme. I don't know about these other schools. I mean, Tech's the closest school to where he's from, and I think is an excellent fit schematically. So I think Tech's going all in with Peoples, and I think he's very, very interested for those things. So he's out of all the offers that I know Tech has sent out so far or whatever, he would be number one on my list. And my gut feel says he's going to end up in Blacksburg, but that's just a guess on my part, just based on things like scheme fit, location of where he's from, etc.
We think Ollie Jennings is coming back. What's our assessment?
I would be surprised if he didn't.
It'd be tough to go pro after you played one game in your last season like that. And he's had injuries throughout his career. Yep. I think being able to come back and put together a full season of tape, and I guess you weigh that against possibly starting a professional career and moving along in the contract status with this. I just don't know what's your draft status right now? What's your draft stock right now after missing a whole year like that, essentially coming off of an injury? And then, you think the NIL piece of this whole thing. And this is where I think a school like Virginia Tech can be held very much like this. I mean, if you're Alabama and you have a bunch of first-round guys, NIL's probably not keeping them in school. If you're a first-round guy. If you're like a fifth or sixth rounder, the money's not quite as great. The guarantee is not there that you'll make a roster, stick around on a roster at all.
Not at all.
Could you come back, be the big man on campus for another year, make decent money? I mean, it's probably not going to be NFL money, but it's probably going to be decent money enough versus what it was before, which was nothing. Over the table, nothing. Under the table, different story perhaps. But, I think you look at that, it might help a school more like Virginia Tech, where they have some of those guys that are lower in the draft that might benefit by coming back and, maybe not necessarily improve their draft stock too much the next year. But, hey, you played another year in college, you starred, you made some money while you're doing it, you were having fun. I think that's enticing to a lot of these guys.
Totally agree. And I think a guy like Jennings, he had a season-ending injury 2 years in a row. Basically broke his leg 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So it's probably not fair to say wide receivers are a dime a dozen, but in the terms of the NFL draft, they're not at like a premium like offensive tackles and defensive tackles are. You can find another 6'2", 200-pounder who can run.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't think he would be drafted after having 2 straight season-ending injuries.
It'd be tough to say. The NFL injuries, red flags go
absolutely.
all over the place.
No,
two straight years with injuries.
No
I'm
doubt.
sure that they'd look at that.
So
and
you're
go,
talking about
I'm gonna have to see a little bit more proof of concept.
So you're talking undrafted free agent probably. So you get invited to camp and you probably get a 10 or 20 grand signing bonus. And then if you don't make the team, you get that signing bonus and nothing.
Right.
And I bet he's making 10 times that in NIL at Virginia Tech. So it was just from a playing time standpoint, getting yourself back on the draft radar by staying healthy for a year, and quite frankly, a financial standpoint, it's a better decision for him to come back, in my opinion.
Plus, I think he likes it.
Yeah.
I think he likes Fontel Mines, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, they've known each other forever. I think if you have a situation like that's the thing these coaches, I think, and Pry is trying to do this. Like, make this a fun place to be around. Don't make this like a slog, like, oh, I've got to show up at practice. I think that's kind of how it felt in the latter Fuente years, where it's just like, oh, man, this thing again. I think if you make it an enjoyable product to be around, the guys will want to stick around too.
And the guys that have entered the portal for Tech, for the most part, are playing in the bowl game, which I think is an indicator that they are enjoying themselves.
That's interesting. It's they have a good relationship, or they have the staff's blessing in this whole thing. Like Dawan Lofton, big team guy.
Yeah,
I mean, he's well liked around that program. Derek Canteen, same way.
Everybody's being sent off with high praise. Like everybody, when Canteen entered the portal, everyone said, "Go get yours, bro!" Like, so happy for you. Like, you got this. Like, even Kyron Drones was tweet. Like, they love him. You know.
Well, players are like that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I know when Hendon Hooker left, everyone was like, go get yours, dog. Like, you go be a starter out there. maybe not the same sentiment on the coaching staff at the time. But I think the coaches, a lot of these guys leaving, this is a reason why they're allowing them to stick around and play in the bowl game. And I've never understood, like, a guy leaves and they're like, oh, that's it. You're done. You're done with the program. We don't want to talk to you anymore. It's like, I think we're all adults here. We all understand what this is like. It's a year-to-year thing at this point. Just let them finish the season with the team they played for the whole season. If they're on another team next season, be mature about it. This is how it works. Coaches do this thing all the time.
True.
I think it's a fair outcome to be like, play in the bowl game, go find your next stop. You can be in the portal and talk to other teams to set up your next situation. I don't take so much offense to it. Whereas I think originally when the transfer portal started, these coaches were just like, it was such an affront to them that, like, how dare you want to leave this team? We're cutting off all contact with you at this point.
I will say, I'll add this about Ali Jennings. I think the one thing going for him is, yes, he has the injuries. The good thing is they seem to be more bone-related break issues rather than ligamental stuff. You know, like if you had a torn ACL in each leg, or you like popped an Achilles at some point, those are really scary injuries to the NFL, you know, because you can lose some of that oomph that made you the player that you are, your explosiveness, things of that nature. So I think that's one thing going for him, that it's bone related. It does change things just a little bit. What do you think, Chris?
I don't know.
You don't know? All right, fair enough.
Couldn't tell you.
I still think they would prefer not to get injured.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Anything else on football? Chris, I want to turn it over to you to let us know what the game plan is going into signing day, what people can be on the lookout for in the next couple of weeks here.
I'll continue to write articles about the transfer portal status. I'll do another one this week. I don't know what day it's going to be. Got some Brandon Patterson article coming either today or tomorrow. Signing day next week is going to be busy. We're planning on doing, like we did last year, like a quick, we're going to show highlights of each recruit. We're going to do videos of, like, basically I'm going to talk about each recruit for a minute or so while we show highlights and things like that. And all those videos will be introduced on signing day as those guys fax in their LOI. They don't fax it in anymore, do they?
E-sign or e-document, whatever they do now.
Showing my age there.
At least there's only 15 signings this year.
That's right.
28, 29,
right.
whatever it was last year. It's a lot less
there you
work
go.
cutting that together.
Some of this is going to be dependent on Virginia Tech. Like, we still don't know exactly their plans for signing day from a media standpoint, do we? So
they're going to do like that big show again, like
Correct.
they did last year.
Right.
That was awesome.
I think they might be streaming it for the public to see.
Right.
I'm not sure, but they have not told us exactly what the plan is yet.
So some of it is like
it's coming up here.
It's
guys.
coming up. It's
might wanna get on
we're
that.
9 days away.
The 20th or 21st?
Whatever that
Whatever the
Wednesday
Wednesday is, yeah.
So I don't know exactly what the plan is that day. We won't know until they let us know exactly what. Like last year, they wouldn't allow everybody in there for the whole time,
Except for this guy.
except for you.
Yeah.
So I was able to actually, because they would only let me in for 30 minutes or so, you know, I was able to work all day. But if they let me in the whole time this time, then I'm going to stay the whole time.
Well, here's what I would put this to Virginia Tech. Let everybody come for the entire time. Nothing
awesome.
bad is going to come out of that.
Yeah.
You're throwing a big party. You're celebrating all your recruits. Wouldn't you want the media to see every second of that?
and
Write about it? Like, I feel like that's win-win-win for everybody.
And
I don't
the
know what
more people are that are there, the better it looks in your pictures and videos
Right.
and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
True. What did you get to do to be so special and stick around the
just
whole time?
awesome, I guess. I don't know what it is.
He asked very nicely.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I think that wraps up our football conversation. Andy's going to step off. David's going to hop back on the set. We're going to talk a little bit of men's and women's basketball coming up. It's episode 336 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Stick around. What's going on, Hokie Nation? Welcome back to episode 336 of the Tech Sideline podcast. We're talking a little bit of men's and women's basketball here. David Cunningham and Chris Coleman on the set. As always, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. As our presenting sponsor, First Bank and Trust Company's support has been invaluable to TSL, helping us to bring you all the great content across all of our platforms. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Bank with First Bank and Trust Company. Visit firstbank.com to learn more. All right, Virginia Tech men's basketball coming off the heels of a win over Valparaiso on Saturday. It was a noon tip inside the castle. 71-50, the final score. Hunter Couture led the way, 19 points, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. He was 50%, 3 of 6 from beyond the arc. David, what stood out to you in this ball game?
I thought the offense was good. Tech shot 57% in the first half. The ball moved well. Mike Young said it was one of the offense's more fluid games. Tech had 18 assists on 23 made field goals. That's a pretty good number. Should note that Sean Padula did not play. So Tech did all of that without Sean Padula. He had a sprain in his foot, was in a boot. Mike Young said he expects Sean Padula to be back this upcoming Saturday against Vermont. But that made Brandon Recksteiner play a bunch. He played 28 minutes. He started the game. All things considered, I thought the Hokies did a good job playing without Sean Padula, and I thought it gave Mike Young a good opportunity to mix and match, play around with some lineups, and kind of see with Recksteiner or MJ Collins at times or Hunter Couture at times as the ball handler, kind of see what he has and rotate guys around and get Jaden Young some playing time and get Robbie Barron going and get Tyler Nickel going. And I thought it was a good chance for a lot of different guys to kind of get a chance to get some shots down. I thought Robbie Barron had one of his better games. He had season high 9 points. He made 2 3-pointers. Couture obviously had another good game. Tyler Nickel hit 4 threes and had 12 points. Yes, there were 15 turnovers, 3 from Recksteiner, 3 from Barron, and I thought at times Tech was sloppy, but I thought a lot of the turnovers were unforced. And if Tech just cleans up some little things as far as even just catching the ball, and Valpo played 1-3-1 zone at times, a 2-3 zone, switch back and forth, very in your face, kind of made Tech made it frustrating for Tech. And this is a Tech team that's playing without its point guard, which you could say, oh, okay, well, it's not a big deal. This is not a good team. You're playing without your point guard. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. But like Sean Padula does so much more than everybody realizes. I mean, even bringing the ball up the floor for 64 possessions a game, like that takes a toll on a guy when running the offense and initiating it. And all things considered, I thought the Hokies did a good job without Sean Padula. They shot the ball pretty well. They played pretty good defense. They held Valpo to 50 points on 65 possessions. The second leading scorer, Cooper Schweiger, only had 2 points. All things considered, I thought the Hokies did a good job, and now they have a week off. So they played Sunday, then they played Saturday. They've got a week off until they play Vermont on Saturday. Good chance to get their feet under them and work on things behind the scenes as a team. Yeah,
Valpo's not great, but they're certainly not Coppin State level of bad. They're much better than that. I thought it was a good win, especially considering you don't have your starting point guard. It should make Virginia Tech a better basketball team. It should help Mike Young help him to quicker figure out his other personnel like Recksteiner. I thought it was interesting that Robbie Barron had maybe his best game in the first game that he didn't start. So you're still working, and when you have that many new players, you're still trying to work out your best mix of guys and things like that. But, that should make Recksteiner a better player. I think you talked about Padula. He was on the court for almost 40 minutes a game last year, especially when the schedule heated up. Like, he was not going to come out of the basketball game. And he's come out a little bit more this year, but still not all that much. And sometimes, if you treat it right as a player and you go through the right process in your head, just watching a basketball game for 40 minutes from the bench, if you know what to look for, could be beneficial. So as long as Padula's foot turns out to be okay, then that could be a game that benefits Virginia Tech in the long run for a variety of reasons. And they've got the rest of this month to build on that and get better, because business is about to pick up in late December.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I can't wait for that. I mean, we got some fun games, don't get me wrong, and some games that the Hokies, weren't in that maybe you wish they were in, but both on the men's and women's side, you're just kind of clamoring for ACC play, right? You go into a game against Valparaiso, you know what the outcome should be, and so you just look forward to, like, that Louisville game was fun. It was close. You trailed at the half, you came back. It was a fun basketball game all the way throughout, highly contested to the last couple of minutes, went down to fouls late, and those are the games you get in ACC play. So I think everyone's looking forward to that. Ask you one more thing on the men's side. What are we seeing out of the 4 and the 5? I'll say the big men is the best way to describe it. Obviously, Lynn Kidd's been fantastic. What are you seeing specifically out of Elijah Poteet?
He's kind of the same as you saw last year, I think. He brings a physical presence. I mean, that guy, if he's walking in the opposite direction down the street and you just see him, you're like, whoa, man, like that's a guy you can throw in there against the more physical teams. I mean, he's going to play every game, obviously, but there are certain matchups where he's going to be even more valuable because of his physicality. I think he's having a good year. I think him and Lynn Kidd are both having good years. Now their Kidd is different from Tech's past centers like Aluma and Basili in that he's not going to shoot a three-pointer like those guys. And I don't think he's as good passing it out of the post as those guys. But as far as finishing around the basket and certainly making free throws, he's very, very good. And he gives Virginia Tech a viable option on the inside. Now, as far as the 4 position goes, I don't know, and I think Mike Young still doesn't know either. I think both of those guys are good players. I think they both have a lot of energy. I think Barron has been I've been impressed defensively, especially with those weak side blocks. He had another one of those on Saturday. I know he's capable of putting up better numbers than he had. It's all about scheme adjustments or adjustment to a new scheme and things like that. My one concern, I think before the end of the season, you're going to see those guys at their best within the Virginia Tech system. The thing is, they're both seniors, so you're going to have to start all over there again next year. So when it comes to the transfer portal stuff, for me, it's ideal to get guys, especially when you're playing a system like Mike Young's system. It's ideal to get guys with multiple years of eligibility left, like Tyler Nickel. I think he's going to be a really good player for Virginia Tech. Robbie Barron and Mekhi Long might be really good players for Tech from like mid-February on. But you get to the end of the season and you're like, dang, wish we had them for another year because they're just now starting to figure things out.
Kind of like
right?
Basili.
Yeah, Basili last year. I mean, by the end of the
Basili chose not to come back. I
Right,
think that's completely
Correct,
different.
correct,
Like
correct,
Tech
right,
recruited
fair.
him with 2 years left.
right.
He played 1 and chose to go play in Italy, and he's playing well
Right,
overseas.
Right. And but once he figured it out, once he adjusted the scheme in the ACC, that guy was an offensive force. I mean, his inside game and his outside game, I mean, he was really an entertaining player to watch for Virginia Tech. And I wish Tech had had him for another year. But so I'd like to see hopefully Tech get some more stability at that position in the future as opposed to relying on 1-year guys.
Lynn Kidd's been good, obviously. I think Elijah Poteet's been good too. I mean, he's averaging 6 points a game. He's going to get you a handful of rebounds per game. I think the 5 is pretty well set. The biggest questions to me are at the 4. Mekhi Long and Robbie Barron, you've got to get them going and try to get them both playing well at the same time. And that's tough because they both play the same spot, essentially. Can you put one in and then put the other in and continue to switch things around? I'm sure that every single time they come on and off the floor, that impacts them. Like they might play well, then you take them off. Do they lose the bit of I don't expect them to lose confidence, but lose the bit of momentum they had just by being out there? I thought you saw Barron play well in his first game coming off the bench, and I think you saw Mekhi Long play pretty well. Mekhi Long is a force rebounding the ball. They both had Barron had 9 and 4, Long had 6 and 6. So I thought you saw improvement, and I think now a little bit more about what Mekhi Long is going to give you. I think I think it's more about getting Barron going. Long is that scrappy player. He's going to grab rebounds. He's going to set screens. He's going to defend pretty well. I think both those guys are very good defenders. it's more offensively, and getting Barron to come in off the bench gives him an opportunity to see what's happening in the game and see how he can impact it from the bench before he steps on the floor. It lets him go, okay, here's the way that they're playing these guys right now. When I come in, how can I exploit that? How can I change that? Maybe that's just what he needs to be able to see it before he does it. I thought he played pretty well, and obviously he had one of his better offensive games. But I think those guys will continue to come along. I think playing Vermont, 7-time, who's won 7 America East titles in a row, been in the tournament the last 6-7 years, that's going to be a good opportunity for Virginia Tech. Vermont is coming off a loss, I believe, to like Colgate Colgate or Cornell. I think Colgate. One of the C.
New York, baby.
One of the C schools. It's red toothpaste, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be a good opportunity against a better opponent for Tech to get a game under its belt and get those guys going. People look at this game and go, okay, it was a one-off for MJ Collins. I wouldn't say that just yet because MJ Collins played a lot of point guard. Every time he was on the floor, he was handling the ball. That is not the position MJ Collins should be in. Sean Padula, Brandon Recksteiner are the point guards. They could be emergency point guards, MJ Collins and Hunter Couture. And I do look at that and go, man, like I can't believe Collins had a wide open layup that he missed. And it's like, I don't. People are going to look at it and go, man, it was a one-off. He had 0 points. He was 0 for 4. He had 2 turnovers. He had 1 assist. But he's playing a different role. Give him some time. Let him settle down. Assuming Sean Padula can get back, and it's going to be those 2 guys playing, and MJ Collins can play off ball and doesn't have to have the ball in his hands all the time and doesn't have to think about who he has to give the ball to every single time. He can just play within the offense. I expect him to be a little bit better as the season wears on. And like you mentioned, Tyler Nickel. I think Tyler Nickel's slowly coming into his own. I think defensively, he's gotten better. If he can continue to trend up defensively, we know what he gives Virginia Tech on the offensive end. He's a good shooter, and he's hitting a bunch of them in rhythm. Like even if a guy is coming off, has a hand coming in his face, he's gotten a couple of those down. That's good to see. If he can continue to provide a spark, I think that's going to be really helpful. I think you look at this Virginia Tech starting lineup, those 5 on the floor, that could be Virginia Tech's starting lineup going forward, of course, with Sean Padula. Sean Padula, Hunter Couture, Tyler Nickel, Mekhi Long, Len Kidd. I think that's a pretty good starting 5. You bring in MJ Collins off the bench. You bring in Robbie Barron off the bench, Elijah Poteet off the bench. I'm not going to say that's an 8-man rotation that's going to win you the ACC, but that's a potential NCAA tournament 8-man rotation if everybody's clicking and all the pieces are playing well. So I think this was a step forward, like I said, without Padula, to give Mike Young a chance to learn more about everybody and to learn more about Jaden Young in the 11 minutes that he played. He grabbed 3 rebounds. He didn't score. Probably should have gotten a 3 down. But Mike Young's continuing to learn more. That was a good opportunity for him to kind of observe and figure out, oh, okay, I think this guy can help us in this way.
Yeah, and it's all about how this team's going to come together. All right, I know this. I know Hunter Couture is an NCAA tournament player. He's an ACC tournament MVP. Sean Padula is capable of playing major minutes for an NCAA tournament team. Robbie Barron started for an NCAA tournament team. Okay, so for 9 of the 10 games this year, Virginia Tech has started 60% of Virginia Tech's starting lineup played in NCAA tournaments, right? It's not the individual like talent level or anything like that. I mean, you'd like to be a little more athletic, I suppose, but it's about how this team gels and how quickly they come together. That they didn't come together as quickly as I hoped this year, but there's still time. But these next couple of weeks in December are really important as far as that goes, as far as how the team gels, as far as Mike Young figuring out his pieces and how properly to use them and things like that. It can still be an NCAA tournament team, but they've got to make up a lot of progress over the next couple of weeks in practice with just, 2 2 more games before the ACC slate.
Yeah, they've got this game and then the, Vermont, and then they got American doubleheader with the women on the 21st, and then they've got Wake Forest on the 30th, I believe. Then they go on the road to a Wake Forest team that I think is trending up a little bit. Wake Forest got Efton Reed. That's a name I know you might remember. Wake Forest got Efton Reed cleared by the NCAA recently. Then they go to Florida State. So this is a crucial moment, and I think it's good that Virginia Tech has this much time off right now. Essentially, in a span of 2 weeks, you have 3 games, all this time to figure out how to play together. You mentioned it. If they can get these guys going and everybody on the same page, and I would say Lynn Kidd's playing like an NCAA tournament center right now. He's playing good basketball. There are a lot of good pieces. It's just about continuing to mesh well and continuing to play off of each other well, continuing to learn each other well. They're still figuring that out. And one of the things I'm hopeful, and it'll be interesting to talk to Sean Padula, assuming he plays after the Vermont game, is what it was like for him to sit back and watch and sit back and just, one, obviously relax a little bit and not have to stress about playing. Obviously, he would like to be out there, but just to see the game and to take a step back and watch and learn. I think this team is trending up. Needs to get off to a hot start on the in the ACC when it comes back after Christmas break. And the good news is that there's a lot of time between now and then. 2 games, plenty of practices to kind of get your feet wet a little bit and continue to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Quickly, women's basketball here. Bounce back win for the Hokies. After the LSU loss, they take down LIU, and then Radford was the big one yesterday, 85-40, the final score. Virginia Tech takes down Radford. David, it was all about the defense, suffocating defensively if you're Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I thought these were 2 good defensive performances for the Hokies. They shot above 50% against LIU, 46% yesterday, but they held Radford to just 11 field goals. It was the 5th lowest shooting percentage by an opponent in Castle Coliseum. Held LIU to 33%. Tech is clicking defensively, and that's good to see. And then I think on the other end, Tech's pushing it in transition more, which has been a little piece of the larger puzzle. Kenny Brooks talked about yesterday in his press conference that the Hokies didn't really have it. First 7-8 games of the year, Hokies weren't really scoring any easy baskets. Against LSU, they didn't really get out in transition and run. They slowed it down and reset the offense. And sometimes the easiest chance to score comes in transition when the defense can't get set. And the Hokies weren't scoring any of those transition baskets. And you saw 8 fast break points for the Hokies against LIU. Stats only credits them with 2 yesterday, but I felt like they were getting out in transition and pushing it more. I know Karis Baker had a 3 in transition. Lots of good opportunities in these 2 games to get young kids going. Karis Baker impressed me. She had 18 on Wednesday against LIU, came back and had 9. She and Clara Strack, the other true freshman. Clara Strack had 9 and 10 yesterday. Against Radford, she had 11 and 6. They're getting those 2 freshmen going. I think they're going to be key pieces in how Virginia Tech performs going forward. Kayla King had 2 big games, 21, 8, after not really doing much against LSU. Matilda Eck had 12 yesterday, 13. So you're starting to see players find their consistency. I think that is what you need if you're Virginia Tech. You go on the road to Rutgers next Sunday. That's an okay Rutgers team, still trying to find its footing under second-year head coach Coquise Washington, I believe. Anytime you go on the road, that's a learning opportunity. That's going to be a big game for Tech, and just in terms of you're going into another team's place and you have to perform, and there are going to be people yelling at you instead of with you, because Tech had a good crowd yesterday. Over 5,000 people showed up to on a rainy Sunday in the NRV. Not great weather, and I was very impressed by just the crowd and everything. I think Carly Wenzel showed some bright spots. The other thing, Gio, before we go,
Yeah.
is Rose Mishaw and Olivia Sumiel. They're not playing their best basketball right now. They've had a good game here or a good game there. These next 2 games, I would say, at Rutgers and then the following week, William and Mary on Wednesday, doubleheader with the men. I think it's Wednesday, or maybe it's Thursday, the 21st. Getting them going is important because you want to have your veterans clicking as you go into ACC play. You can see that the young kids, Baker and Strack, are playing well and they're finding their rhythm right now. Wenzel, I thought she played well yesterday, even though she had a couple freshman mistakes. You're getting the young players going. Excuse me. But unlike the freshmen, the veterans, they already have an idea of what their role should be because they're coming from Wake Forest or Minnesota. The freshmen, they come in, they go, all I know is high school basketball. All I know is this is how I did it in the past. The transfers come in and they go, well, this is how I did it there. Is this how I'm supposed to be playing? And I can imagine that they're second guessing a lot and they're trying to figure it out. You know, after the men's game on Saturday, I was up on press row in Castle, still writing my story and finishing up some things. And the first person to walk in the gym after everybody left for the men's game was Olivia Sumiel. She walked in and she was getting some shots up with Lindsay Hicks. And I know she and Rose Mishaw are trying to find their rhythm. Mishaw had 4 points yesterday. I thought her energy was very good. Sumiel did not score but had 5 rebounds. I think they're doing a lot of things right if they can just get going. And it's not like they haven't been able to do anything this year. You know, Sumiel obviously got the big game against Tulane to lift Hokies and the Cayman Islands. I think there are good signs. Tech just kind of has to put everything together. And I think Rutgers, William and Mary, before you come back off winter break, you host Pitt on, I believe, New Year's Eve. You know, the ACC play is going to be here before we know it. You want your veterans to be clicking. You want your veterans to be playing well within the system. I think these are 2 big games for them. And as Kenny Brooks said yesterday, it shows that you can't just grab a transfer and throw them in. They're going to play well. It takes some time for them to find a rhythm and to get things going. So all things considered, two good wins. It was cool. The autism awareness game yesterday. That was really cool to see. Good crowd. Again, I was impressed by that. I think both men and women are trending in the right direction right now. Have a week off. It's going to be a very quiet week just in terms of everything. Might have some football media availability. I'll probably write a basketball story or 2, but there's not a whole lot going on right now. I am planning on going to Rutgers next Sunday, so I'll be up there. But again, no basketball during the week, so we'll have to find stuff to keep you occupied over the next 5 or 6 days or so.
The calm before the signing day storm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a basketball doubleheader on Thursday, the day after signing day. So
Buckle up.
yeah, and then we turn around and Andy and I go up to DC for military bowl stuff. So it's
We'll see you there.
yeah, this week is going to be pretty relaxed. Before next week, it's going to be like bang, 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 Christmas, military bowl. Yeah, and then before we know it, it's going to be New Year's. And it's going to be very chaotic here soon.
Maybe one year I'll actually be able to enjoy a Christmas.
Are you going to go to the gym on Christmas this year? I heard you went to the gym on Christmas. Or you were mad that the gym wasn't open on Christmas. It was one or the other.
No, it was open. I couldn't have Christmas last year because my parents' pipes froze over on Christmas Eve and busted. It was so cold. It was when the same thing happened to you.
Yeah.
So
Last year,
I was expecting a Christmas feast and everything, so I didn't go to the store. So
man.
Kroger was closed on Christmas Day, so I ended up eating 7-Eleven meals for Christmas.
Oh,
last
that's
year.
what your Christmas story was. It wasn't the gym. It was that Kroger
I did
wasn't
go to
open.
the gym to work off all the 7-Eleven junk.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this year. It was the day after Christmas last year, and I was at my grandma's in Northern Virginia, and I found out that my pipes burst and my apartment flooded.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, for those who remember last year, I did not have a, and along with that, my car was in the shop. So I was driving. Will was nice enough to lend me the cop car, and I was driving the cop car while sleeping on Evan Hughes' couch for about a week or 2 last year. So hopefully
and the content was still elite.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just a lot of stuff around Christmas. I'm not the most Christmassy person to
Move
begin with.
signing day to February.
Yes, move signing day to February. That make me much happier.
Because then we're just focusing on bowl prep and basketball.
And transfer portal.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, 'tis the season, fellas. I think that does it for episode 336 of the Tech Sideline podcast. One more time, today's show is brought to you by both the Hokie Way and First Bake and Trust Company. Well, we'll see you next time on the Tech Sideline podcast. For Andy Bitter, for Jack Brizendine, for David Cunningham, for Chris Coleman, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long. We'll see you next time.